In the aftermath of an unfathomable tragedy, Ketheric Thorm, once a pillar of light in the prosperous town of Wraithwin, had found that his world had plunged into an abyss of despair. As grief consumed him, the fragments of his soul shattered, and whispers from the shadows began beckoning, promising an escape from the anguish. This dark path, however, was filled with deceit, and it would lead Ketheric to plunge even further into the grim darkness, creating one of the Forgotten Realms' greatest villains. The town of Wraithwin was situated on the banks of the Chianthar River, along the Risen Road, a highly trafficked road that connects the cities of Baldur's Gate and Elturel. The location of Wraithwin was very economically viable, as most travelers would stop in the town on their 200-mile journey from city to city, and traders wishing to pass through were required to pay a toll fee. The town was ran by a proud half-elf by the name of Ketheric Thorm, and Governor Thorm and his loving family resided in a beautiful castle that overlooked the landscape, Moonrise Towers. Wraithwin was built in the name of the Moon Maiden, the Lady of Silver, the goddess of the moon herself, Selûne, and Selûne's radiance blessed the town with guidance and love. Ketheric's wife, Melodia Thorm, was known to be a loving mother and a beloved wife, and their familial bond was complete with the birth of their beautiful daughter named Isobel, who held an unparalleled significance in their lives. The Thorm family also had a dog named Squire. Other members of the Thorm family also held positions of power within the town of Wraithwin. Malus Thorm, Ketheric's uncle, was the surgeon at the House of Healing. Ketheric's son, possibly bastard son, or maybe even neglected son, Thisobald Thorm, was the master brewer of the Waning Moon. And Garangoth Thorm was the tollmaster of the Wraithwin Toll House. As the adage goes, though, all good things must come to an end, some stories more tragic than others. And one day, Melodia would fall ill. Throughout her illness, she held great faith in her family and her goddess Selûne. We can find a letter from the past from Melodia to Isobel in a chest within Moonrise Towers. "My darling daughter, when you were a little girl, I would often watch you play with your dolls and your cousins, and picture myself an enormous opaque silvery shield surrounding you, protecting you. I knew somehow, deep within myself, that no harm could ever befall you, as I would not let it. Though the healers say I may pass into the city of judgment soon, know this, darling daughter, I am always around you, I am always with you, and the Moon Maiden will never allow you to bear a burden you cannot carry. I love you forever, a love that has no death. Mama." Melodia also wrote a letter to her husband in her final days. She expresses some comfort in the thought of soon being able to walk the silver gardens of Selûne's heavenly realm. But she also says, "Selûne's light shines bright in our little one, but she'll need a guide to keep on her path. I have no doubt that she'll keep you on yours." And then she ends the letter with, "How I love you forever, Melodia." As expected, Melodia passed away, and the Thorm family and the town of Wraithwin grieved. Things, however, went on, and Ketheric maintained his faith in honor of his wife's wishes, even if he was starting to become a bit skeptical himself. And he guided Isobel to become a great cleric of Selûne. Wraithwin was such a faithful and prosperous town that one day the Moon Maiden herself sent an emissary to visit. This emissary was Selûne's immortal Aasimar daughter named Dame Aylin. Dame Aylin and Isobel fell in love at first sight, but this did not please Ketheric. Isobel felt like her father was not comfortable with the power dynamic between herself and Dame Aylin, a mortal and an immortal. Dame Aylin believed that Ketheric was threatened by her love, and that he viewed her as the one who is taking his daughter away from him. And then the unimaginable happened. Ketheric lost his daughter. Isobel was killed. The cause of Isobel's death is hard to decipher, but we do know from speaking to Squire, the family dog, over 100 years after her death, that Squire was also killed trying to protect Isobel the night of her death. The death of Isobel inflicted an indescribable sorrow upon Ketheric. He had now lost his loving wife, his beautiful daughter, and even his dog. Ketheric's pain could be touched by no aid, no boundary, and he lost all faith in the goddess Selûne. And this is when the shadows began beckoning, when darkness began to seep into his mind. Ketheric would turn to the goddess of darkness and loss, Selûne's evil twin sister, Shar, in hopes of gaining some relief from his pain at whatever the cost. The question now becomes, was all of this part of a meticulously orchestrated scheme composed by Shar herself? A plan designed to systematically divert the town of Wraithwyn from the illuminating embrace of Selûne? That we have to leave to speculation. Volume 1 of Ketheric's diary, which can be found in the Thorm Mausoleum in Act 2, reads as, "How can she be gone? Where did she go? The Moon Maiden cannot be so unfeeling, so cruel. Not toward her most devoted servant, not after Melodia. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. I won't survive it, that much I know. Forgetting is the only possibility, the embrace of oblivion, the reprieve of nothingness. It would not be possible for a man to survive knowing what he knows, knowing what can be lost. Shar understands that. Hers is the only mercy I can comprehend." And we'll come back to Volume 1 here shortly. Shar deceptively feigned deep concern for Ketheric, and subtly fostered his grief, nurturing seeds of resentment and bitterness that ultimately led Ketheric to succumb to the enveloping darkness that she wields. "My dark goddess, I am yours." Ketheric's animosity towards Dame Aylin, Isobel's true love, intensified with each passing day. Ketheric and his advisor Balthazar would go on to formulate an intricate master plan aimed at acquiring formidable power for Ketheric, while also punishing Aylin and her mother, the goddess Selûne. This plan would also align with Shar's goals of having Ketheric begin building a powerful army of elite dark justiciars. Ketheric and Balthazar found a way to lure Dame Aylin into the Shadowfell, the dark plane of existence that was created by Shar herself, by placing a victim there in need of Aylin's aid. When Aylin arrived to the Shadowfell, she was unexpectedly captured and trapped in an infernal cage, a soul chain of sorts created by Balthazar. Aylin was then killed over and over and over again by the followers of Shar as an ultimate test of their worth, and Ketheric was able to feed off of her rebirth, effectively siphoning her immortality. To protect the entrance to the Shadowfell plane where Dame Aylin was being held prisoner, Ketheric had built a very large Sharan temple underground. But this was not just a temple, it also served as a gauntlet. Those who wished to become dark justiciars, elite warriors of Shar gifted with supernatural abilities, would have to complete a series of trials in the gauntlet, and if they were able to do so successfully, they would then gain entrance to the Shadowfell to complete their ultimate task of killing the daughter of Selûne, Dame Aylin. On a side but related note, Shadowheart's mission in Acts 1 and 2 is to become a Dark Justiciar and complete the gauntlet and the final task. There's also the contract to retrieve the Nightsong relic, one of the main quests of Baldur's Gate 3, that was sent from a wizard residing in Baldur's Gate named Larian. You eventually learn that the Nightsong is Dame Aylin, and that Larian sought immortality for himself. Before we continue on, if you are enjoying yourself, I greatly appreciate those of you who hit that like and subscribe button and leave a comment below. If you'd like to support in other ways, consider becoming a channel member or patron of the channel. Without you all, this type of content just wouldn't really be possible, so thank you. Ketheric would now begin raising an elite army of Sharans, ready to destroy all who oppose Shar, especially those who worship Shar's sister, Selûne. This Sharan army was able to retake an ancient underground fortress built long ago by Sharans, called Grimforge, the Lost City. Grimforge connected to the Temple of Shar, and it would serve as headquarters for the Dark Justiciars, who would go on to destroy the nearby Selûnite town of Moonhaven. While rebuilding Grimforge and amassing his army, Ketheric also was working diligently to turn his entire town of Wraithwyn to Shar's worship. Not all were willing to succumb to the darkness, though, and the head of the Masons Guild and the master architect behind Moonrise Towers itself, Mordfred, became desperate to save the town. So desperate that he made a deal with a devil named Raphael. Mordfred can actually be found undead in Raphael's House of Hope in Baldur's Gate 3. Mordfred sold his soul to Raphael in exchange for Raphael's aid in fighting the Dark Justiciars. and Raphael agreed to this deal and sent a Hellbeast, an Orthon named Yrgir, and a legion of Maragons, also known as Legion Devils, to the Temple of Shar and Grimforge, and the Sharans were unsuccessful in their defense.
Wander Shar's halls, hungry to slay, leave no justice here, alive to obey.
Ketheric was already being pressed hard on the surface from a sect of the Harpers faction being led by Jaheira, and a sect of the Emerald Enclave faction being led by the first druid, Helsin. The Harpers and the Emerald Enclave were committed to putting an end to Ketheric's tyrannical, unnatural reign of the land, and a massive battle would take place in Wraithwin. This alliance made between the Harpers and the Emerald Enclave can be seen depicted in murals on the stone walls found within the Druid's Grove in Act 1.
Towers seized, the battle done. The moonrise broke the darkest one.
Ketheric's army was defeated in this great battle that took place in the 14th century DR, the century before Baldur's Gate 3. Ketheric was defeated, but he did something that would change the land for over a century. He unleashed the Shadow Curse. Encompassing Wraithwin and its surroundings, shadowy tendrils arose over the ground and across its sky, killing and twisting the natural life within, and infusing it with the umbral energy of the Lady of Loss, Shar. The Shadowfell plane, the plane of Shar, had leaked into Wraithwin, and nothing natural was left apart from a Selûnite resistance hiding underground. Now, how Ketheric released the Shadow Curse in his defeat, or how Shar released it through Ketheric, is unclear. And where it gets confusing is when you meet Jaheira in the Last Light Inn, and do note that this is over a century after Ketheric and his army's defeat. And Jaheira tells you that Ketheric was actually killed in this battle, not just simply defeated.
Alongside the local druids, we made it our business to see him deposed, dead and buried.
If Ketheric had soul-caged Dame Aylin, and we know that she's been soul-caged for over 100 years, he should have not been able to die. There's a few possible theories for how this could have occurred, such as Ketheric feigning his death to avoid capture and avoid his secret of immortality being discovered. The release of the Shadow Curse could have overpowered Ketheric's immortality and ultimately killed him. Perhaps Ketheric and Balthazar didn't figure out how to siphon Aylin's immortality until much later on. My timeline of events in this story could be a little off, as Larian did leave plenty of things unclear. And it's also not out of the realm of possibility that Larian's writing could be a little mixed up in this particular case. Regardless of the specifics on how exactly that played out, Ketheric was either resurrected or never actually died. And there came a time when he began to realize that Shar could not provide him with what he truly sought after. He could not let go of the deaths of his wife and daughter. He could not truly embrace the emptiness of the Lady of Loss. So Ketheric betrayed Shar and turned to another god. A god who may be able to give him exactly what he seeks. The god that may be responsible for his resurrection if he did actually die. Returning to where we left off in Ketheric's diary. The emptiness, the time, the nothingness, and still I remember. Still I remember it all. There is no mercy in this beating heart. There is no mercy in life at all. Forgetting evades me in this infinite darkness. Balthazar is my own source of barest comfort. The thought that perhaps she might be brought back to me. If oblivion can fail, what defense have we against death? None except its mastery. Balthazar's words have never felt more promising. Melodia would understand if she knew my aim. She too, I believe, would have turned to Myrkul under such conditions as these. Our darling will live again. What kind of man would I be if I didn't raise the world entirely for her sake? Ketheric had now become a servant of one of the dead three, the creators of the cult of the Absolute, Myrkul. He did this in exchange for the power to resurrect with a beating heart his daughter Isobel. Ketheric became a true servant of Myrkul, a chosen, a general of the Absolute. And Myrkul had him establish Moonrise Towers as the headquarters for a growing army of Absolutists who were going to march on the city of Baldur's Gate. With the powers of Myrkul, the dead was also raised in his town of Wraithwin, bringing back several Thorm family members, but not with beating hearts like Isobel. They all became undead creatures. Isobel's resurrection occurred 100 years after her death, in 1492 DR, the time of Baldur's Gate 3. Upon returning to life, Isobel immediately detected an unusual disposition in her father, and Ketheric told her that Aylin was dead. Isobel, sensing that things were not right, ran from Moonrise Towers and found refuge in the Last Light Inn, which was currently the base for a small Selûnite resistance, being led by the famed druid Jaheira. Isobel then hears of all of the atrocities committed by her father, and she learns that he was the one responsible for the Shadow Curse itself. When you come across Isobel in the Last Light Inn, you can find her muttering to the elven bust in her room, saying, "Why did you change?" Ketheric's mission at this point was to gather forces of the Absolute for Myrkul, and he was also tasked with sending forces out to retrieve the Astral Prism, which at this point in the game mysteriously has the power to resist the Absolute, as players experience this firsthand with the prism in their possession. But perhaps even more imminent of a task for himself, Ketheric needed to retrieve Dame Aylin from the Shadowfell. Aylin was the true source of his invulnerability, and with his recent fallout with Shar, Aylin is no longer in a place where Ketheric can ensure that he'll remain in control of her and continue to sap her immortality. Ketheric sends Balthazar to the temple in Gauntlet of Shar to devise a way to retrieve Dame Aylin from the Shadowfell and bring her back to Moonrise Towers. Even though Shar had lost control of the temple, she would still not simply allow a servant of Ketheric to enter the Shadowfell to take Aylin. Shar now despised Ketheric and wanted nothing more than to end his existence. Now we're entering the realm of player choice affecting the details of this story, making what is canon less clear. Regardless of what you as the player decide to do, whether you save Isobel from the forces sent by Ketheric to take her back, and whether or not you free Dame Aylin or let Shadowheart end her immortality as a chosen of Shar. Ultimately, all choices lead to your confrontation with Ketheric at Moonrise Towers. You, the player, need answers, and Ketheric is a leader of the forces of the Absolute.
You serve the Absolute. You serve me. Bow, you dog. Bow!
Ketheric has now lost his invulnerability from Aylin, though, from your actions, and he also learns that you, the player, have the Astral Prism in your possession. After you somewhat defeat him in his throne room, a giant tentacle breaches from the earth and teleports Ketheric to a place deep underneath the tower. In your pursuit underneath the towers, you find out that Ketheric has been housing a fleet of nautiloid ships and an elder brain being controlled by one of the most powerful Netherese artifacts in existence, the Crown of Karsus. This elder brain is the Absolute, and the Dead Three are controlling it through the use of netherstones that hold power over the crown. The Dead Three have each of their chosens wielding the netherstones. Ketheric's co-conspirators are Gortash, a chosen of Bane, the god of tyranny, and Orin, a chosen of Baal, the god of murder. You learn, though, that Ketheric has no plans of continuing to share power with Gortash and Orin, as Myrkul, the god of the dead, wants sole control of the Elder Brain. Ketheric would do anything for Myrkul, as Myrkul has allowed the resurrection of his daughter. The amassed army of the Absolute then begins its march to take over the city of Baldur's Gate, but Ketheric remains back to confront you to take the Astral Prism. After you defeat Ketheric, he calls out to the Lord of Bones and says that he is ready, before falling backwards into a deep pit. This is when you hear the voice of Myrkul himself. An avatar of Myrkul then rises from the depths. After defeating this avatar, a form of Ketheric reappears for the last time, but no one is there this time to bring him back, and his last word ever spoken is his daughter's name, Isobel.
You have no idea what you've done. Isobel.
And that concludes the tragic story of Ketheric Thorm. Now, one may say that if you, the player, saved Isobel and also Dame Aylin, that Ketheric's tale of evil and tragedy may end in a bit of Selûna's light, as he did bring back his daughter at ultimately the cost of his own life, and his daughter Isobel may yet be able to find happiness again with Dame Aylin at her side. For many fathers, that may just be a happy ending.